Ciao, and welcome back to Immersion Travel Italy. I'm Caterina Ferrara, travel author, blogger, and your host. This podcast is about experiencing Italy beyond the checklist. Slowing down and understanding the place is not for what we see, but for why they matter. This is episode 15 of 20 in our Regional Capitals of Italy series, where we're traveling region by region from north to south to uncover the cities that quietly shape Italy's identity, often far from the spotlight. For the last 2 weeks, we've been visiting Naples and Campania. Today, we're heading east to Molise, one of Italy's smallest, least populated, and understood regions. Molise is famous in Italy for a running joke. Il Molise non esiste. Molise doesn't exist. It's said half in humor, half in genuine confusion because Molise didn't exist as its own region until 1963. For over a century of Italian unification, this territory was simply part of Abruzzo. Most Italians grew up learning about Abruzzi e Molise as one place, or often just called Abruzzo. Then 63 years ago, through a quiet bureaucratic reform, Molise was separated. It became Italy's 20th region. But the split came so late and so quietly that many Italians never registered the change. So when you ask Italians to name all 20 regions, Molise is the often forgotten region. Why the split? Abruzzo was larger, more populous, and increasingly industrial. Molise was smaller, rural, and agricultural, with a very different economic need, infrastructure priorities, and political concerns. Decisions made at the regional level consistently favored Abruzzo, while Molise remained underrepresented and underfunded. Molise needed its own administration to address issues tied to depopulation, rural communities, and mountain communities. Molise exists in mountain villages where traditions are still lived, in shepherding routes that predate Rome, in bell foundries that have cast bronze in the same way for 7 centuries, in hilltop castles that still watch the valleys they've commanded since medieval times. This is Molise and its capital, Campobasso. Let's begin. To understand Molise like the other regions, to start out, you have to let go of the idea of unified Italy. Molise was the heartland of the Samnites, one of Rome's fiercest and most persistent enemies. From roughly the 5th to the 3rd centuries BC, the Samnites controlled much of the central Apennines. They were not a single city-state, but a federation of mountain tribes, fiercely independent, pastoral, and militarily formidable. The Samnite Wars were some of the most humiliating conflicts Rome ever faced. In 321 BC, Roman legions were famously defeated at the Battle of the Caudine Forks. They walked into a narrow mountain pass and found themselves trapped. No battle, just surrender. Roman soldiers were forced to pass under the yoke of spears, the ultimate humiliation. Rome never forgot the shame. Molise's terrain mattered. Narrow valleys, rugged hills, and high elevations favored fighters who knew the land intimately. This was not an easy region to conquer. It took Rome decades to finally absorb it, but even then, the rhythms of shepherding and seasonal movement continued. Roman rule layered itself on top of existing pastoral life rather than replacing it. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, Molise did not fall dramatically. It fragmented quietly. The region came under Lombard control and became part of the Duchy of Benevento that we mentioned in last episode, currently a part of Campania. Fortified villages appeared, castles crowned hilltops, power was local, defensive, and decentralized. Then came the Normans in the 11th century who unified much of southern Italy. They strengthened Molise's castles and established feudal control, but daily life remained rural. After the Normans came the Swabians, Angevins, Aragonese, Spanish rulers, and finally the Bourbons. Dynasties changed hands constantly above Molise, but on the ground, life changed slowly, and land mattered more than cities. This is when Campobasso began to grow as a regional center, perched on a hill beneath a castle, developing as a defensive and administrative hub rather than a royal seat. Spanish and Bourbon rule reinforced religious life and tight-knit communities. The Catholic Church and local churches became anchors of identity. Festivals rooted themselves deeply in town calendars. 1960, Molise was absorbed into the newly unified Kingdom of Italy. For Molise, unification was not a triumph, it was destabilizing. Feudal systems collapsed without being replaced. Economic opportunity flowed north. Many families emigrated, first within Italy, then abroad, especially to North America, and entire villages hollowed out. And yet, Unlike industrial regions, Molise never reinvented itself. Its identity remained rural, familial, and rooted. Before 1963, Molise did not exist as an independent region, as I mentioned before. Molise appeared on maps suddenly in 1960s, long after Italians thought the national puzzle was complete. Many Italians grew up never hearing about it in school. It produced few national headlines, and Molise lacks a major city or dramatic coastline. Campobasso has been shaped primarily by two major seismic events. In 1456, the central southern Italy earthquake was one of the most destructive earthquakes in Italian history. It affected a vast area from Abruzzo through Molise into Campania. It destroyed and severely damaged medieval Campobasso, leading to the rebuilding of Castello Monforte by Nicola II Monforte. This was a major reset in the city's defensive and religious structures. The second earthquake I want to mention was in 1805. The epicenter was very close to Campobasso. It was one of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded in southern Italy. It caused widespread destruction across Molise. Heavily damaged churches and public buildings were rebuilt in Campobasso, and it prompted the 19th century rebuilding, including the Cathedral of the Holy Trinity. Molise did not experience large-scale destruction during World War I and World War II, especially when compared to industrial or strategic regions of Italy. There were no major battles fought here, no widespread bombings of cities, no dramatic turning points that shaped the region overnight. The area was impacted as thousands of men from these towns were conscripted into the Italian army and sent to fight on distant fronts, especially in the Alps and along the Isonzo River. Many never returned. For small villages, the loss of even a few young men had lasting consequences. Because Molise was already rural and underpopulated, the losses accelerated depopulation and weakened local economies. Fields went unattended. Families fractured. The war's impact was felt long after rather than during the fighting. The capital city of Campobasso. At the heart of the region is its capital, Campobasso, a hilltop city often passed through but rarely understood. Campobasso sits at an elevation of 700 meters, roughly 2,300 feet, above sea level, giving it wide views over the surrounding Apennine landscape. The city has a population of just under 50,000 residents, reinforcing its role as a capital that functions without scale or spectacle. Campobasso is not a grand capital in the traditional sense. It's compact, local, and deeply connected to the land around it. Molise sits between Abruzzo to the north, Lazio and Campania to the west, and Puglia to the south. It's mountainous, pastoral, and inward-looking. The Apennines dominate the landscape. Sheep trails crisscross the hills. I also want to mention that Campobasso is home to a university, the University of Molise, founded in 1982. It's a small public university, but it plays an outsized role in the city's daily rhythm. The university brings students from across the region and neighboring regions into the capital, adding energy, cafes, and movement to a city that might otherwise feel purely administrative. You notice it in bookstores, at coffee bars, and the way the city shifts slightly during the academic year. The university focuses on fields closely tied to the region itself, including agriculture, environmental sciences, economics, law, and human sciences. That focus reflects Molise's priorities. This is not a university trying to compete or scale. It's one that's designed to support the land, communities, and regional identity around it. This region is shaped by the transhumance, that ancient practice of moving herds between mountain and lowland pastures. Long before highways and borders, these routes connected Molise and the rest of Italy. In this episode, we'll explore Campobasso and what it means to be a capital without spectacle. The modern town spreads gently across the lower slopes, practical and understated. Above it, the Centro Storico climbs the hill in tight, winding streets. At the very top, watching everything quietly, sits the castle. We'll start in the lower city, the modern city. An espresso costs 90 cents at the bar. Shopkeepers sweep their storefronts before opening. Smell of fresh bread drifts from bakeries that have occupied the same corners for generations. From here, you notice something immediately. The old town always remains in view, stacked above you, inviting but not insisting. We'll begin our ascent to the Centro Storico. As you begin climbing, the streets are narrow and they curve. Stone replaces pavement, buildings lean close together, and the city quiets, almost without warning. This is the part of Campobasso that developed organically, shaped by defense rather than design. Streets bend to slow intruders. Views open suddenly, then disappear. Windows are small. This is a town built for endurance, not display. As you walk, you notice how domestic everything feels. Laundry lines stretch across the alleys. Flower pots rest on stone steps. This is not a historic center preserved for tourists. People live here. You know, I always want to start our walks with a Pasticceria Ciccone, founded in the early 20th century and still family run. Ciccone is the historic pasticceria of Campobasso. Inside, the air smells like butter and almonds. The space feels familiar rather than being curated. Locals step in briefly, greet each other by name, order without looking, and move on. Coffee is taken standing at the bar. The pastries are classic and restrained. Small pasticcini mignon, cream-filled nut-based, chocolate-glazed, crostate made with simple dough and seasonal fillings. Cakes ordered for Sundays, feast days, and family celebrations. A true local pasticceria. As we continue upward, we'll reach the Cathedral of the Holy Trinity, the city's main cathedral. Its current form dates from largely in the 19th century, rebuilt after earthquakes damaged earlier structures. That detail matters. Campobasso, like much of Molise, has rebuilt quietly after disruption, again and again. Inside, the space feels calm and functional, reflecting a community church rather than a monument. Faith here is steady, not theatrical. Next, we'll reach the upper Old Town streets, and this is the most rewarding part of the walk. Here, just wonder. You'll pass small arches, stone staircases, and occasional viewpoints, opening out toward the surrounding Apennines. The landscape becomes part of the city's identity. Hills roll outward in every direction. There's no dramatic coastline, no single focal point, just green land. This is Molise's geography written directly into its capital. At the summit of Campobasso stands the Castello Monforte, the city's defining landmark. It's not a complete castle. It's not a ruin. What survives today is substantial, including powerful stone walls, defensive towers, and the unmistakable outline of the fortress built for control rather than comfort. As you reach the top, winds hit you immediately. It moves uninterrupted across the hill, just as it has for centuries. That exposure is intentional. This was the highest and most strategic point in the area, chosen for visibility, not shelter. The castle was rebuilt in the 15th century by Nicola II Montfort after the devastating earthquake of 1456. What he constructed was a military stronghold, not a residence. There's no courtyards for leisure, no decorative facades, no ceremonial halls. This castle was not meant to be a palace, it was meant to be a fortress. Today, the castle is open to visitors and the grounds are accessible. You can walk along the outer areas, moving between the surviving towers, and stand directly on the exposed stone where centuries once scanned the valleys below. There's no elaborate interior tour, but the absence reinforces its purpose. From the castle ground, the views open up completely. Below, you see the modern city spreading outward. Between you and the present day lies the layered Old Town. Beyond it, the landscape that rolls in every direction, quiet and expansive. Campobasso was never isolated, but it was never central either. It existed between regions, between powers, between eras. Castello Monforte embodies that role perfectly. It does not dominate a territory through spectacle. It guarded through position. I also want to make a recommendation for lunch or dinner, and that's Monticelli Sapori e Tradizione. After walking through town, have a seat and eat the way Molise eats. Slowly, generously, and without embellishment. Sapori e Tradizione is one of the most highly rated restaurants in central Campobasso for traditional Molesan food. It's a comfortable place in the historic center that attracts a mix of locals, families, and travelers who've done their homework. Local specialties I'll mention. The first one is cavatelli molesani. This is the backbone of the local pasta tradition. Cavatelli are small, hand-shaped pasta made simply from flour and water. In Molise, they're often served with a ragu of meat, wild greens, or pork-based sauces. They're meant to hold the sauce, not float in it. The dish reflects Molise perfectly. Humble ingredients, careful hands, deep satisfaction. I also want to mention the pampanella. This is a slow, roasted pork dish, heavily seasoned with garlic, chili pepper, paprika, and herbs. The smell alone is delicious. The meat is intensely flavored, slightly spicy, deeply aromatic. When you order it, it arrives in thick slices, the crust dark and glistening. Lamb is central to Molise's shepherding tradition, and this dish reflects that heritage. The lamb is typically slow-cooked with herbs, garlic, and sometimes potatoes, allowing the meat to become tender and expressive rather than masked. Scamorza and local cheeses. Molise produces excellent dairy, and Monticelli highlights it well. Look for scamorza, lightly smoked or fresh, and sheeped and mixed milk cheeses. Simple preparations that let texture and quality shine. These dishes speak directly to transhumance and pastoral life. Molise is also known for seasonal vegetables and legumes. The cuisine relies heavily on what grew in the mountain soil. Beans, lentils, wild greens, potatoes, and bitter vegetables appear frequently, often prepared with simple olive oil and garlic. These dishes are reminders that Molise is an inland region where food flowed by the season, not by the sea. Campobasso's principal festival is the Procession of the Mysteries, held each year on Corpus Domini. This event defines the city and sets it apart from every other capital in Italy. During the procession, towering structures called ingegni move slowly through the historic center. Suspended within them are real people, often children and young adults, dressed as angels and saints. They appear to float, completely still, suspended in air. It's an optical illusion created by hidden iron frameworks designed by sculptor Paolo Saverio di Zeno in the mid-1700s. But even knowing this, it's startling to watch. I've seen this, and the small children that are dressed as angels seem to hover 25 feet above the ground by invisible support. And I always think, my dad would let me do that. My mom would be like, no, but my dad would say, yeah, you can absolutely do that. Their faces are serious, and they hold these positions for hours during the procession. They're not performers. They're your neighbor's daughter or the baker's son. Families prepare for months, and participation is passed down through generations. The procession unfolds quietly and deliberately, accompanied by music and church bells. Streets fill, balconies overflow, and time seems to slow as the mysteries pass. There are 13 mysteries in total, each dedicated to a different saint. San Crispino, San Gennaro, San Isidoro, Santa Maria Maddalena, Sant'Antonio Abate, the Immacolata, Mary, San Leonardo, San Rocco, San Michele, l'Assunta, San Nicola, and Santissimo Cuore. Each one tells a story. Each one is carried on the shoulders of at least 12 young people who follow a precise rhythm, directed by their mystery chief. This tradition dates back for more than 300 years. One of the most extraordinary experiences in Molise is a visit to the Fondiera Marinelli, located in the hill town of Agnone, about 55 kilometers or an hour and 15 minutes by car. This is a bell foundry, but not just a bell foundry. It is one of the oldest family-run businesses in Italy. The Marinelli family has operated this foundry since 1339, when Nicodemo Marinelli cast and signed the first documented bell bearing his name. Bell making in Agnone may date back even earlier. Tradition claims to the year 1040, but what matters is this. For nearly 7 centuries, this family has been casting bells using the same techniques, and I've seen them do it. For centuries, their bells have rung out from churches across Italy and far beyond, including the Vatican. Walking into the foundry, you smell metal and ash and hot bronze. Heat radiates from the casting areas even when they're not actively working. Wooden molds rest alongside modern tools. Bells of all sizes line the space, each inscribed with a date, a saint, and a prayer. Some are destined for churches in Sicily, others the Vatican. The techniques haven't changed. The lost wax casting method used today is the same method they used in 1339. I love watching the artisans work here, hearing the hammers on bronze, feeling the weight of the tradition in this place where craftsmanship has passed from father to son for 26 generations. After the visit, walk Agnone's historic center. Stone streets, quiet churches, and small workshops reinforce the sense that tradition has never stopped. This is an ideal half-day trip from Campobasso, and please make sure you're there to hear the ringing of the bells. Another day trip recommendation is Sapino and Rome in Molise. Attilia Sapino is about 45 minutes from Campobasso. It offers one of the most surprising Roman sites in southern Italy. At Attilia, the remains of the Roman city life are fully visible in the open countryside. No crowds, no barriers, no ticket booth. You walk where the Romans walked. The Forum is still clearly defined. Gates stand at all 4 entrances, marking where the city began and ended. Streets run in straight lines. Houses show their floor plans. The theater rises from the hillside. And the most striking thing is that sheep graze nearby, just as they did 2,000 years ago. The shepherd routes the Romans built, the tratturi, are still in use. In spring and autumn, you might see flocks moving along the ancient paths, continuing a practice that predates the city itself. This location perfectly illustrates Molise's continuity. Roman infrastructure layered itself into Samnite routes, and when Rome faded, life simply shifted rather than vanished. The site is in a wide valley surrounded by mountains. The light here is wonderful. You can spend an hour or 3 depending on how deeply you want to explore. Bring water because there are no services here. Wear good shoes and give yourself time to simply sit and enjoy it. Molise by the sea at Termoli. Termoli is the heart of Molise's coast and the most compelling seaside town. What makes Termoli special is it has 2 identities. Below, white sand beaches stretch along the Adriatic, clean and well kept, popular with Italian families rather than international tourists. Above, perched on a promontory, is the Borgo Antico, a walled medieval town overlooking the sea. 3 sights to see in Termoli include the Castello Svevo. The Swabian castle stands at the entrance to Termoli's old town, built in the 13th century under Frederick II. It was a defensive fortress built to watch the Adriatic coastline. The castle's thick walls rise directly from the promontory, surrounded by fortifications that once enclosed the entire medieval quarter. The structure is imposing but functional, square towers, narrow windows, battlements designed for archers rather than decoration. Today, the interior is often closed to the public, but the exterior dominates the approach to town, and walking past it, you'll feel the weight of the defensive architecture. This was built to last through coastal raids and centuries of shifting powers. From the ramparts and the surrounding walls, views open across the Adriatic, and on clear days you can see far down the coast. In the heart of the Borgo Antico, facing Piazza Duomo, stands Termoli's Romanesque cathedral. Built between the 11th and 13th century, the cathedral combines Apulian and Molissan architectural styles. The facade is clean and restrained, white stone, simple proportions, no excessive ornamentation. The cathedral is built on 2 levels. You enter the upper church via 9 steps. Inside, the space feels calm and uncluttered. Below is the crypt, the older and more atmospheric section. Here, the relics of San Basso and San Timoteo, Termoli's patron saints, are kept. The air is cooler down here. Stone columns support low vaulted ceilings. Light filters through small openings. The cathedral opens early in the morning and the late afternoon, and visitors are expected to respect religious function. Cover your shoulders and knees is what that means. And visit at sunset when possible. The cathedral sits in the old town's highest section, and the light from the piazza catches the stone facade directly. Termoli's medieval quarter sits on a rocky promontory jutting into the Adriatic. The entire Borgo Antico is surrounded by defensive walls that separate the ancient town from the modern development below. You enter through arched gates, and immediately the streets narrow. The layout is pure medieval defense. Winding lanes designed to confuse invaders, sharp turns that eliminate sightlines, small piazzas that open unexpectedly. Houses are painted in faded pastels, pink, yellow, and cream, their walls pressed closely together. Laundry hangs between buildings. Caper plants grow from the cracks in the stone walls, their white flowers scenting the air. Small shops sell ceramics and local products, but this is not a tourist district. Walk the perimeter path along the defensive wall, and views open constantly. The harbor below, the fishing boats at anchor, the Adriatic Sea stretching toward Croatia. Look for a Regicelle, supposedly Italy's narrowest alley. You have to turn sideways to pass through. The Borgo Antico is compact, and you can walk the entire quarter in 30 minutes. Sit at a cafe in Piazza Duomo. Watch the light change as the afternoon becomes evening. This is Termoli at its best, a working fishing village that happens to have a 1,000-year-old center. You can swim in the morning and walk medieval streets in the afternoon. Termoli feels first like a town and second like a beach destination, which is exactly why it works. In this episode, we explored Campobasso. We walked its hilltop streets, climbed toward its castle, and found meaning not in monuments but in rhythm. Coffee taken standing at the bar, streets shaped for defense, a city that functions quietly. We saw how Molise's history unfolded differently, how it was shaped by Samnite resistance, Roman roads, medieval fortresses, and centuries of pastoral life, how it became a region almost accidentally, and how that preserved something rare, continuity. We stepped in tradition that still lives, the procession of the mysteries in Campobasso, carried on by community for generations and generations. Agnone and the sounds of bells cast by the Marinelli family for nearly 1,000 years. We talked about Roman Sapino, where ruins sit unguarded in the countryside, and Termoli reminded us that even the sea here remains understated. Thank you for spending time with me as we visited beautiful Molise. Next Friday, we'll continue our Regional Capitals of Italy series, moving south to the region of Puglia, a region of beaches, history, and beauty. Until then, travel slowly, travel deeply, and let the cities tell their stories.